Today I'm going to share with you 5 pre-flop poker tips for beginners. You may say, Jonathan, I'm not a beginner. I know exactly how to play poker. I'm really, really good. And maybe you are, but I've read a lot of comments down below. When you're down there, click the like and subscribe button, by the way. Also, we have the poker coaching Discord, and I see a lot of players who are working hard to improve their skills, but they still make consistent mistakes before the flop. And you have to realize that before the flop, you get to make a decision every single hand. And if you are making even small errors on a regular basis, well, that's going to result in a lot of money flowing in your opponent's directions. So, tip number 1 is that position matters. Acting last gives you more information about what your opponent is doing in the hand. Also, acting last lets you control the size of the pot because you always have the opportunity to put in a bet or a raise. So, because of this, you get to play many more hands in late position compared to early position. And this is something a lot of people do wrong. They play the same or almost the same range of hands from all positions. And that's a mistake. This is especially true as stacks get deeper and deeper because seeing flops in position allows you to play deep stacked with the most information, still with the ability to make the pot huge when you feel inclined. Let's take a look at 100 big blind cash game, raise first in ranges. This means if everyone folds around to you, the hands in red are raised, the hands in blue are folded. Here we have UTG 8. That means if you are first to act with 8 players at the table. If there are more players at the table, like 10, you're going to play a tiny bit tighter, but not all that much tighter because you only get to play about 11% of hands from early position in a cash game. Notice the hands that are not playing. Ace-10 offsuit, King-Jack offsuit, Ace-2 suited, Queen-9 suited, Jack-9 suited, 9-8 suited, pocket 4s, 3s, 2s. All these hands just fold every time from early position. Now, if you're playing in a game where your opponents will not re-raise you often enough, perhaps you can play a little bit wider, especially with the good suited hands like Ace-2 suited, Queen-9 suited, Jack-9 suited, 9-8 suited, 8-7 suited, 7-6 suited, and maybe even the small pairs. But the offsuit hands are especially bad from early position, and I would recommend always folding Ace-10 offsuit and King-Jack offsuit from first position 8-handed. From the button, if everyone folds around you, now you get to play a whole lot more hands, 40%. Notice now the hands that are folding, stuff like 8-5 suited, 6-4 suited, 4-3 suited, Ace-2 offsuit, King-7 offsuit, Queen-8 offsuit, 9-8 offsuit, 8-7 offsuit. These hands are now not quite good enough to play. Again, if the blinds are not going to 3-bet you often enough, you can play a little bit wider. By the way, these charts presume that there is no rake taken out of the pot, which is the case in a lot of, call them poker clubs, where they don't take rake out of each pot, but they take rake every hour or something like that, or every 30 minutes, or when you go in the door. If your casino takes a rake out of every pot, you have to play a little bit tighter. Also, these charts presume that there is no ante. If there's an ante in play, you actually get to play a little bit looser because the pot is bigger. This is why you'll see tournament charts are wider than cash game charts, because in a tournament, no rake is ever taken out of every individual pot. And also there's often an ante in play. So as the pot gets bigger, you get to play wider ranges. As the pot is smaller, you have to play tighter ranges. Tip number 2, do not play too loose. Many players raise and call raises far too often, especially in small stakes cash games. And again, this results in little bits of equity going to your opponents every single time you decide to get loosey-goosey. Also, in cash games, playing too loose will result in the rake, if it's taken out of every pot, absolutely crushing you. You cannot win if you consistently pay a high rake. I know it's annoying to fold a lot, but if the rake is high, you have to play relatively tight. Let's take a look. Again, 100 big blind cash game ranges. Here we have the button strategy versus an under-the-gun RFI, an under-the-gun raise. So if under the gun, 8-handed, raises, here is what the game theory optimal strategy is. Now remember, this presumes the opponent is raising with this range here. Okay, so under the gun 8 raises with this range. Here's what we should do on the button if everyone folds to us. We are re-raising the hands in red, calling the hands in green. Well, let's take a look at both ranges. Which hands are re-raising? We have aces, kings, and ace-king re-raising for value. And that's it. May seem tight, but that's it. Notice queens and jacks re-raise only a little bit at a time. 10s, 9s, 8s, 7s almost always call. Ace queen suited, ace queen offsuit, ace jack suited, ace 10 suited, king queen suited, pretty much always call. Then we are re-raise bluffing, which a lot of people do not do. We are re-raise bluffing with some ace x suited, some king x suited, and some suited connectors. And that's it. Notice again, a lot of other stuff is folding that you may opt to normally play. Notice, again, queen 9 suited, jack 9 suited, 9 8 suited, 8 7 suited, 4s, 3s, 2s, all folding. Ace jack offsuit, king queen offsuit, again, all folding. It may seem tight, but that is the game theory optimal strategy. Now again, if your opponent is going to play wider than this before the flop, say you think they're raising ace 9 offsuit and jack 10 offsuit and pocket 2s and queen 8 suited and all sorts of junk, then yeah, you should play wider. You should adjust to what your opponents are doing incorrectly. But you're going to find that most players today are not raising overly wide from early position. So you're really forced to play pretty tight. If you do think your opponent's going to make all sort of post-flop mistakes, maybe they check fold every time they miss the flop, then sure, maybe you can play a little bit wider. But again, you just can't get too crazy. What about the button versus a cutoff raise? So now everyone folds around to the cutoff. They raise the 3 big blinds. It's on you on the button. Notice now, you get to play a wider range. We are now re-raising something like pocket 10s and better. Kings, queens, aces, and ace king every time. Jacks and 10s sometimes. Again, a lot of ace x suited and king x suited bluffs, plus a few suited connectors. You're going to find that's always the case when you're in position in a cash game. And then a few more blocker bluffs with the offsuit high card hands. Ace queen, ace jack, king jack, and ace 10 offsuit. Take a look at what is not playing, though. All the offsuit stuff is not playing. Consider how people play in a lot of live local cash games. Say they have a hand like jack 10 offsuit. If the cutoff raises and they're on the button, they call that jack 10 offsuit every time. And notice it is a very clear fold. A lot of people call 7-6 offsuit or 6-9 suited or the jack 4 offsuit for fun. All these hands are very clear folds. If you play too loose, you are going to get crushed. I cannot make this any more clear. This is the reason why all the loosey-goosey splashy players at small stakes games do not move up. They can't move up because they don't have any money to move up because they're consistently losing due to making these blunders on a consistent basis. Tip number 3 is to play tight from the small blind. From the small blind, when someone raises before you, you have to play tightly because being out of position against the initial raiser is bad, and being out of position in a 3-way pot is really bad. So you're going to want to play strong ranges and 3-bet quite frequently when you are in the small blind. Again, here are 100 big blind cash game charts. If you want charts for tournaments, by the way, make sure you check out the Poker Coaching app and pokercoaching.com. We have all sorts of cash game charts, tournament charts, but for consistency today, we're just discussing these 100 big blind cash game ranges with no ante and no rake. All right, here we have the small blind versus a low jack raise. The low jack would be under the gun if there were 6 people at the table. So they raise, it folds to us in the small blind. Here's a scenario where we are re-raising now with something like jacks and better, pocket 10s a little bit, a bunch of suited strong high cards, ace king offsuit, ace 5 suited, a few suited connectors, and ace 4 suited sometimes. We're calling only with hands that flop extremely well. Suited Broadway hands, ace 4 suited, some pairs, and ace queen offsuit. Everything else is folding. Notice king queen, ace jack, pocket 4s, 3s, 2s, 9 8 suited, 8 7 suited. All these hands are folding the vast majority of the time. If there's a rake taken out of every individual pot, you will actually re-raise or fold every hand you want to play. Because you cannot expect to turn a profit when you call pre-flop and then the casino just takes 5 or 10% of that pot. Doesn't work from out of position. So you need to re-raise and make your opponent fold a large chunk of the time or bloat the pot with a good strong value range. Here we have the small blind button array, small blind versus a button raise first in. Notice now, a lot of re-raising. Pretty much every hand you're going to play, besides ace 9 suited and queen 9 suited, are 3-betting the majority of the time. Notice again, what is not calling? King 10 offsuit, ace 9 offsuit, jack 10 offsuit, 3s, 2s, 9 8 suited, 8 7 suited. These hands are hands that a lot of people play every single time from the small blind, but that is a substantial blunder. And again, if you make substantial blunders on a regular basis, you're going to lose. So stop making these blunders. You have to have discipline to succeed at poker. First, you need to study so that you know what good, strong, fundamentally sound poker looks like. And then you need to logically adjust to take advantage of whatever it is your opponents do wrong. And then you need to actually do it. So many people, when they're in game, they just decide to get loosey-goosey for fun because they're bored or they're tired or they're doing whatever they want. They're goofing off. And it turns out if you goof off at poker against people who are trying to win, you're probably going to lose. Tip number 4 is to play cautiously multi-way against multiple reasonable ranges. You simply must play cautiously. And you're going to find this is the exact opposite of what many players do. You may say, why do you have to play cautiously multi-way? Aren't you getting better pot odds? You are getting better pot odds, but your equity realization is going to be very poor with your medium strength hands. And it turns out if you play a lot of marginal stuff before the flop, like King 8 offsuit or King 9 offsuit or Queen 9 offsuit, whatever, you end up making one pair with a marginal kicker. And one pair with a marginal kicker against multiple opponents is not where you want to be. That is a recipe for disaster. So you're going to find that multi-way, the hands that you get to play are hands that can relatively easily make the nuts, which are going to be suited aces, good suited connectors, and pairs. Offsuit hands become especially bad multi-way. And again, consider a live cash game. If it goes raise, call, 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 and you're on the button with Jack 8 offsuit, a lot of people put in that 3 big blind call every single time. But that is a blunder. They are torching their money. And again, they're going to have almost no chance to win at poker long term. Let's take a look at some game theory optimal ranges. Here we have the button versus a hijack, raise, and a cutoff call. Let's take a look at just this chart first. Button versus a hijack raise, which would be under the gun if there were 5 people at the table, and then a cutoff call. The cutoff is to the right of the button. This is about as wide as you can reasonably call if you were trying to play good, strong, fundamentally sound poker. Notice what's re-raising. Good, strong, linear range for the most part, plus a few suited aces and kings and suited connector bluffs. Again, that's always going to be the type of range you 3-bet from the button. So we're 3-betting jacks and better, ace, queen and better, king, queen offsuit is a bluff, ace, queen offsuit is a bluff too, king, jack suited, queen, jack suited, few suited connectors, suited aces. Notice what's calling. Some suited aces, suited broadways, and pairs. Now, I think this is probably a little bit tighter than you actually have to call in most live cash games. However, you can't get away with calling stuff like King 10 offsuit, Ace 9 offsuit, Queen Jack offsuit. You just can't do it. You're going to be torching your money. If you told me you wanted to play all the suited connectors down to 5-4 suited, that's probably fine, right? If you wanted to play every suited ace, that's probably fine. Again, these are hands that can make the nuts, and you really are trying to make very strong hands post-flop. But the offsuit hands are detrimentally horrible. Here we have a chart for the big blind versus a hijack, raise, and a cutoff call. So, hijack makes it 3 big blinds, cutoff calls, button and small blind fold, and it's on you in the big blind. In this scenario, some people call with almost any 2 cards because they think they're putting in 2 big blinds to try to win, 9.5 big blinds. Getting great pot odds. But again, your equity realization from out of position against 2 reasonable ranges should be terrible. So you have to play really tight. And again, notice what is not playing. The offsuit hands, ace 10, king jack, queen jack, and everything else folds. Notice the suited aces all get to play. Lots of suited connectors and suited one-gappers get to play. You're re-raising a strong linear range from out of position. From out of position, by the way, you're almost always re-raising only the best hands and perhaps some suited connectors and suited aces, but a lot of the best hands re-raise. And that's it. You got to play tight. This is something people make a mistake at all the time. They defend the big blind multi-way far too wide, and that results in them just bleeding money every single time they're in the big blind, way more so than they need to be bleeding. So, play cautiously multi-way. You have to if you want to win. Tip number 5. This is for the tournament players or the short stack players out there. Do not only push or fold when short stacked. Understand that you are playing no limit hold'em, not all in or fold hold'em. So, calling is an option. And this is especially true from the button, small blind, and big blind when someone raises. If you think you're supposed to go all in or fold because someone said you should go all in or fold when you're short stacked, well, you messed up. You learned the wrong thing. Check out the pokercoaching.com app. All these charts, by the way, I've shown you are in the Poker Coaching app. And I want to make sure that you reference the right material. So here's what we're looking at. We are looking at the big blind versus a 2 big blind raise in a tournament. So here, The button makes it 2 big blinds. The small blind folds, and it's on us in the big blind. A lot of people think we have 12 big blinds, all in or fold, but absolutely not. So here I'm going to show you how to play 12 big blinds deep, 15 big blinds deep, and then on the next slide, 20 and 25 big blinds deep. So 12 big blinds deep. The hands in red go all in. The hands in green call, and the hands in blue fold. So this is when the button with 12 big blinds min raises. The small blind folds, and you with 12 big blinds, this is what you do. Notice you're shoving all the pairs except for aces and kings. Those slow play. You're shoving almost every offsuit ace, the best suited aces, the worst suited kings, king jack offsuit, and king queen offsuit. Everything else that's anywhere near decent calls, unless it's offsuit. The offsuit stuff still folds a lot. Okay? By the way, if you're somehow listening to the audio of this, go watch the video at youtube.com/pokercoaching. By the way, if you're enjoying this video, do me a quick favor, click the like and subscribe button down below. Hopefully you're learning something. 15 big blinds deep. You actually get to play a little bit wider because in game theory optimal world, the button should be min raising with a wider range, 15 big blinds deep compared to 12, so their range will be a little bit weaker. Notice again though, similar strategy where queens and worse shove, a lot of the offsuit aces shove, the best suited aces shove, and some of the worst suited kings shove. Everything else starts to call, including every single suited hand. If you think you're supposed to shove or fold, notice you would be blundering with all these hands because you certainly cannot profitably shove the 6-2 suited for value, or as a bluff, or for equity realization, whatever you want to call it. And you also don't want to fold it. A lot of people make this big mistake where they're all in or fold for 10, 12, 15 big blinds, and it is a big mistake. Notice you get to call all of these hands. Now, 20 big blinds deep, this is where you have to decide if you want to have an all-in range, a non-all-in 3-bet range to perhaps 5.5 big blinds, and then a calling range and a folding range, or if you just want to shove or call or fold. Notice the 3-bet non-all-in range is only 4.1% of hands. It's not huge, but I would recommend you start using this if you are trying to get better at poker. But if you wanted to go all in with every hand that's red or light red here, that's probably okay. You'll be losing a little bit of equity. Don't shove these junky hands down here, by the way. These Jack 5 offsuit, Jack 4 offsuit, Jack 3 offsuit, 10-7 offsuit bluffs, you do not want to shove those. That would be a disaster. So notice again, in this scenario, we're shoving queens and worse, a lot of offsuit aces, good ace X suited, and some king X suited, right? We're 3-betting for value with aces, kings, queens, ace king suited, ace jack suited, ace 10 suited. These are very, very strong. Jack 10 suited, 10-9 suited, 9-8 suited, 8-7 suited, and 10-8 suited. Those are pretty good too. And then some total trash. You may say, why 3-bet the total trash? Well, because our range to 3-bet small is very strong, we get to mix in some bluffs. And those bluffs are hands with a blocker that are perhaps not quite good enough to call. We have queen 2, jack 3, jack 4, jack 5, and 10-7 offsuit. Okay? 25 big blinds deep, we see a similar strategy taking place. Notice we get to 3-bet a little bit wider for value now. Ace 10 suited and better, pocket jacks and better, jack 10, 10, 9, 9, 8 suited, and then a whole lot of offsuit trashy bluffs with some king X offsuit, queen X offsuit, jack X offsuit, and 10X offsuit, some small frequency of the time, small portion of the time. If you wanted to make your life easier, perhaps you could 3-bet with king 3 offsuit, queen 4 offsuit, and jack 5 offsuit every time, and then call all the other ones. That's going to be probably having you 3-bet a little bit too much, but it's way easier to implement than trying to make 3-bets 15% of the time with all those hands. But again, what I want to show you here is that you're not all in or fold. Notice the calling range. In both of these charts, you're calling a ton. Notice you're only folding 15-ish% of the time in this scenario. If your only options were all in or fold, I don't know exactly the math here, but you're probably supposed to fold like, I don't know, 50% of the time or something like that. So would you rather play 85% of hands profitably or 50% of hands profitably? Hopefully, you can use some common sense to realize you'd rather play 85% of hands profitably than 50% or 40% or whatever it is. Okay? Realize you are not playing all in or fold. Hold 'em. So that's it. That's it for today. Those were 5 pre-flop tips for beginners. If some of this stuff was advanced for you, well, you need to make sure you are studying a ton. I have tournament and cash game masterclasses. They're 40-hour long courses at pokercoaching.com that will teach you everything you need to know to crush the majority of players in those games. So make sure you check that out. Again, if you enjoyed the video, click the like and subscribe button below. If you have any poker friends who you think may need to, well, learn some of these tips for beginners, send them this video. That goes a long way to helping me and helping the channel. Good luck in your games. Have fun. Thank you for being here. And I'll talk to you next time.